One of the most important things you can do on your farm is soil test, but it's not just to pull soil samples, it's to determine, well, after I've got the results, what do I do with them now? We're going to explain this over the next few weeks here on Ag PhD. We'll start today with the most important thing on that soil test, soil pH.
Well, first of all, you may be saying, well, wait a second. Now, soil pH varies throughout my field, and I'm going to pretty much have to grid sample to have a great feel for where those areas are in my field that are high pH or low pH, because I probably have some of each in my field. And I say you absolutely do, and you can certainly do that yourself. Like for me, I don't have my smartphone on me today, Brian. Wow, I must have left it in the truck. But normally I just grab my smartphone and take a look at that out in the field and use Soil Test Pro from farmlogic.com, and we can actually take grid samples right in our field. It tells you how to label those samples so you can send them into the lab, and you can actually get a prescription back if you're going to do some variable rate fertility. Now you may say, well, I'm not going to do variable rate NP and K on my farm. That's fine, but if you have soil pH differences out there, there may be some areas you need to lime, there may be some areas you need to handle with other types of soil amendments, and soil pH is one of those things that you absolutely have to variable rate across your farm.
Those are good comments, Darren, but you know the thing I picked up from your comments was you called to pick up a truck, and on the farm we don't do that. You know what a truck is? A truck's a semi, or it's a straight truck, or a tandem axle. That's a truck. So,
oh boy, this is what you get working with your brother every day, and I'm just waiting for him to tell me what my smartphone is really called too.
Darren ends up talking to too many non-farmers, and non-farmers all the time will refer to their pickup as a truck. It's not. It's a pickup. You want to see a truck, come to the farm.
Brian's all worried about this stuff. I'm just worried about getting good soil samples off my farm and understanding where those pH changes are. Like,
and
for
you
example,
may have to drive your pickup out to the field to get some of those soil tests.
Oh, this is going to be a long show, isn't it? I don't know. Okay, so anyway, let's just take, for example, a field that Brian picked up a few years back. He had pHs as low as 5.1 up on the hills, and in the valleys he had a pH down in the 8.1 range. And it's all in the same field, and it was just a few grid points over in his farm. And you think about that, if you're going to manage the whole farm the same, you can't. You can't even come close, because at that low pH, you're going to have certain nutrients that are tied up and held in the soil, made unavailable for your crop. And you're going to have very poor production on crops like alfalfa, for example. It doesn't respond to low pHs at all. At a 5 pH, there's hardly any yield potential left. And at that 7 pH in between there, it'd be perfect. And then you get into that 8 pH and you start having problems again. So you have to control, or you have to treat those areas much differently.
Yep, now to simplify this for you, what we're talking about here, 6.8 is about the ideal pH. We want to be within about a half a point of that either way. So 6.3 to 7.3, that's kind of the range we'd like to be in. But ideally, most crops like a 6.8. So if you have low pH soil, it's not that tough to fix. You just put calcium carbonate out there or lime your soil, and you will raise the pH almost immediately. With your soil test, you can get recommendations from the soil lab, and they will tell you how many pounds or how many tons of lime do you need to raise your pH up to a good level. Pretty simple to do.
Well, it's something that doesn't happen overnight either. You put the lime out there, it's not like tomorrow your pH is going to be completely different.
No, but by next season it's going to be somewhat different.
Correct. That's why we like to do these things in the fall if we can. Now we get some moisture, whether it's through snow that's going to melt or we get some late fall rains. This all helps get that lime into the soil. And when we're putting that lime in there, it's important to think about whether you're going to be in conventional till, strip till like we talked about, or no-till. If you're doing conventional till, you're going to be able to change that pH that much faster. If you're in a strict no-till program, it's going to take a little bit longer for that lime to work.
More than a little bit, yeah.
Well, it depends on rainfall. If you're in an area that has good rainfall, like you were talking about 100 inches of rain in Brazil and no-till, hey, no problem. It's going to work pretty quickly.
It depends a lot on soil type though. So if you have a really heavy soil, it's very hard to get that calcium carbonate down 6 inches, 12 inches deep in the soil, however you need to change that pH.
This is an important thing too. When we're looking at soil pH, it's important in a few spots out in the field at least to measure what that pH is down in the top 6 inches, then the next 6 inches down, and so forth. We do 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, and 18 to 24 inch cores just in a few areas to see if we need to change that pH very far down. For the most part on our farm, we just need to influence that top 6 inches. That's where our pH has gotten low on us, and when we get a little deeper in our soil, it's more of a neutral pH.
Okay, let's talk real quick about high pH soil. A lot of people will tell you you can't fix it. You absolutely can. You can use elemental sulfur that will immediately change your pH. It will lower the pH.
But it's a short-term impact. It's not a long-term lasting impact.
You could use some elemental sulfur every year if you wanted to. To fix it long-term though, chances are you're going to have to improve the drainage out there. Usually what we find is poor drainage leads to higher salt levels and higher pH levels over time.
Or it leads to erosion problems. And that's something that we've got on some of our ground that we've picked up recently too, where we've had some heavy erosion over the years where water, again, wasn't managed properly. And now we've got pHs that are extremely high.
Yep, so manage that water properly, and over time your soil pH will start to come down. So once again, soil pH is the most important thing on the soil test. You've got to look at that first. It's more important than even NP or K. If your soil pH is out of whack, you've already given up maybe 20%, 30%, 40% of your yield before the year ever even starts. There's no point in that. Address that pH first.
Well, and if your pH is low again, you can just throw some lime in your truck, Brian, and get it out to your field, and maybe that'll even stop our weed of the week. We'll talk about it coming up after this.